channel? Yeah. Okay. All right, before we get started with David, we just want to make a brief announcement and an exciting announcement. Several of you have heard the history even this weekend, and many of you have experienced the history of Ruby Central and the conferences we do. We started with 40 people in 2001. Then we grew incrementally from there until all of a sudden last year it tripled in size. And then if you kind of consider this an extension of the Ruby conference, we've tripled again from 200 to 600. It's actually probably closer to 700 in terms of people that we have crammed in here. So we are a humble, small, nonprofit organization. None of us do this full time. And in an effort to scale, and actually I should just give you a little more information about what that means. I've gotten email every day since registration sold out in February asking to be on the waiting list. I mean, like even last week and earlier this week. And I'm thinking, you know, if you're not on the waiting list now, what do you think? So we're very excited to announce that we have already decided on what's going to happen next year. And we have a very exciting partnership to announce. We are going to be doing RailsConf next year with O'Reilly and Associates. And here with us to discuss that and to tell you the details is Gina Blaber, who is the conference's director for O'Reilly.
Hi. We're really thrilled to be doing this conference next year with the Ruby Central guys. Needless to say, these guys are going to be doing the program. Same as this year, even better next year. Woohoo! They've been doing great so far, so we want them to just keep doing it. So the conference is going to be May 17th to 20th at the Oregon Convention Center in Portland. So, yeah. So put that in your date books now. Yeah, right, that's the Oregon, that's the Portland contingent there. We actually would also like to get feedback from you about what you'd like to see more of, less of, at the conference next year. So I think tomorrow morning, Dave and Chad are going to be telling you where you can put that feedback. In the nicest possible way. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing all of you next year.
Go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, last night you experienced why the lucky stiff and the thirsty cups. Huh? All right. But that is nothing. Tonight, we have the man who single-handedly took down Oprah in her town, right? The king of the internet by some people, David Heinemeier Hansson.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to be talking to you tonight about discovering a world of resources on Rails. But before we get into that, which is actually kind of almost a tutorial type talk, I am just going to spend just a few minutes being, a little bit arrogant. Since it's almost a tradition now that I start out to talk, almost insulting people, well, I'll just take a minute or two to gloat. This cover pretty much represents the kind of excitement we've felt from all over the place in especially the last 6 months. It seems like we've finally got some attention outside of just our own little group. And that's, of course, pretty cool. But at the same time, I think it's pretty important to think about why we got that kind of attention. And as I was listening to Dave Thomas's talk yesterday, I definitely shared a lot of the intentions and ideas, and I thought that a lot of the suggestions were great. But at the same time, I think it's very important for us to remember that the reason we're here today, and the reason Rails is what it is today, is exactly because we said no to a lot of things. It's exactly because we turned a lot of people away. And I don't think that just as people are picking up on that and actually converting over is the time to swear the course of that too much. So I definitely agree on a lot of the practical suggestions, but I don't as much agree on the tone. I don't really think that Rails currently is in a position where it should bend to the outside world. I think we're actually working very well of bending the outside world to us. And I especially latched on to a word that I've been hearing a few times, the real world. Well, as most of you probably already know, I'm pretty confident not living in the real world. I like this imaginary world a whole lot better. And Rails is in large part an imaginary world dreamed up where we're not under the same kinds of constraints that these, sorry people have to live under in the real world. The real world, unfortunately, is quite a miserable place to be. The real world is where you're weighed down by decades of old practices. And that's really not what Rails is about, and it's not what it's going to be about. So I just wanted to make that point clear. I'll surely come back to that later. Now, just for a little bit of that gloating joy, I was just in Japan 2 days ago, I think, if I can calculate the time zones. And it was amazing to see that here we are, 550 people in the West being excited about this thing. And over there, there's a whole nother huge community doing a lot of Ruby stuff and already also a ton of Rails stuff. And a lot of it I didn't even know about. So there's a lot more going on than just us in this little room. And there's a lot more going on than just this one imaginary world that I've been dreaming up. What I was especially surprised to hear is that one of the measures we've been using of our success is book sales, for example. So the last count I have from what the English version of the Agile Web Development has sold is some 40,000. The translation to Japanese, I learned, just sold in a few months 7,000 additional copies. And they have 3 more books on the way, not translations, originally developed content out of Japan. And I thought that was pretty cool. Of course, pretty cool is also all the things going on in English and all the books coming out from various publishers. I've somewhat lost count, but it's definitely above 10 new titles coming out this year, which is pretty exciting. It's also exciting to see the growth happening in the individual teams that has been working with Rails for a long time. One of the examples I pull forth over and over again is 43things.com, because I really like the stuff that the Robot Co-op is doing. And for a long time, they've been somewhat of a benchmark of what a big public-facing sites are doing in terms of scale. And the last time I talked to them, they were now doing 3.5 million dynamic Rails-generated page views per day, which is pretty cool. But really, this talk is not too much about the gloating or about the explicit mentions of this alternate universe. This talk is actually really about CRUD. Yeah. CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. That is the baseline of most of the work we do. Most of the work we do builds on top of this simple concept of how you manipulate objects in some space or manipulate database tables and so on and so forth.